some of you supposed to be dead?
You never really die on Westworld, though, right?
All right, we have a lot of questions to get through, including a reveal of the official Season 3 trailer and a ton of surprises. So, to give you a roadmap, we're going to have a conversation about what happened in Season 2, and what's about to happen in Season 3, and more generally, we're going to talk about AI and where we're headed with artificial consciousness. So, I've been soliciting questions online, and I want to start with a fan FAQ. So, everybody wants to know what happened in that final scene after the credits of Season 2, when we learned that the man in black is himself stuck in a loop, being tested for fidelity, just as he had tested James Delos repeatedly. So Lisa and Jonah, can you explain to us what's going on in that scene?
Lisa's going to do a fantastic job of explaining.
I knew you were going to do that. I knew you got this. You did that to me. I'll bet this first question he punted to me. Jesus. Divorce.
If this is where we're starting.
Divorce.
Right to divorce. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Amy. Well done. I don't know. Ed wrote the scene on a napkin and handed it to us, and we shot him because he's dead, and he had a big gun.
All right, that's a good segue into the next question, which is whether or not the Man in Black has a role in the next season. Is he going to be back?
Let me take you back to the previous comment. We talked about Ed with his big gun.
Fair enough.
I'm not going to call him and tell him he's not on the show anymore.
No, he would make me do that incidentally.
Okay. So a lot of fans want to know about Logan. So is Logan coming back? Or is that the end of Logan?
So many secrets.
I know.
All right, well, let's just talk generally about characters then. Are there any characters you're willing to maybe tell us a little bit more about?
I mean, there's a difficult part towards the end of every season where, we have, let's face it, we have the best cast on TV. And the highest form of praise on our show is we kill you. So there's a difficult moment at the end of every season where we have to make difficult phone calls to let people know. Lisa and I sort of drew a blueprint for the show 5 years ago when we were making the pilot, and everyone becomes like family. So those calls are difficult. Sometimes they're easy. It was easy with Hemsworth. Terrific actor, but a somewhat disruptive personality.
I mean, first, I'm not sure if you want to say that.
Sorry, I'm late. I never like to leave the house without a Hemsworth.
Can we talk about time? Because a lot of fans, and myself included, are not entirely clear on what year the story takes place. Can you give us some sense of when exactly in the future this is happening?
We should watch the trailer.
We should, but we have questions that we need to
Yeah, but the trailer would answer a lot of those questions.
Aaron, I feel you.
Aaron, I don't know if you've been to Comic-Con before.
Yeah.
Just want to walk you through how it kind of works. You play the trailer at the end of the panel.
Yeah, but why?
Play it at the end.
I think we should play it now and then we can talk about it. That's just my own.
Have you seen the trailer?
What?
Have you seen the trailer?
I've seen the trailer. You haven't seen the trailer?
I haven't seen the trailer.
Haven't you seen the trailer?
I love the trailer. The trailer is very good.
But wouldn't it be so useful for us to know when the story in the trailer is taking place? Like 2050, 2055?
I don't know, if you saw the trailer, it would be pretty obvious when it takes place. Would it though? Just saying, yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ, just show them the fucking trailer. It was amazing.
I would like to renew my objection. We're supposed to watch it at the end of the panel.
I'm happy we watched it just now, I'm just saying.
All right.
right,
I think there could have been more Stubbs.
All right, so I think everybody, including we all have a lot of questions now. The first is, are Nazis malware? I'm gonna take that as a yes. All right, is there a name for season 3? So season 1 was the theme, right? Was the maze. Season 2 was the door. What is season 3? What did we just see?
The new world.
So that means we've left the park?
I didn't say that.
Well, I gotta say, normally when we're working on stories about the future, it looks like a horrific hellscape. And this actually looked kind of gorgeous. This did not look like the typical rainy, horrible, dark future dystopia. So, and it kind of looked like Singapore. What is this?
No, I grew up with, my brother made me watch Blade Runner once a week. Kind of a weird thing. It's a phenomenal movie, but it's kind of, that movie set the look. It's such a brilliantly designed and produced film. It kind of set the look. When you think of what the future looks like, you think of that film. And we wanted to find something a bit different. Because, we got to Blade Runner set in 2017, 2014. We got there, it doesn't look, 2019, thank you, sir. It doesn't look like Blade Runner. The thing about dystopias is they can look pretty beautiful, right? The world, just because the world, is corrupt on the inside, doesn't mean it can't be smoothed over and pretty on the outside. So we wanted to find ourselves a version of a dystopia that didn't look like anything we'd seen before. And we've been kind of planning this from the beginning. We were writing the pilot, trying to figure out how are we going to shoot season 3. And the answer was, rather than building it, because that's one option, we went looking for it. We got on the plane and we flew around and we dragged all these lovely people all over the place, and we found some pretty rad stuff.
So I think in the trailer I heard Evan's voice as Dolores, maybe Dolores, I'm not sure, say, there are machines in this world, but not like us. We have no mother, we have no father. So, are you talking about humans, or is there, or the hosts, or is there some third form of life we haven't met yet? Do you have any sense?
In what sense, about having a mother and a father?
Yeah.
Well, not that I know of. I think it represents just how she is a fish out of water this season. She's truly on her own. Obviously, we lost Teddy. That was kind of my fault. I'm sorry. She regrets it. She's taken these mysterious pearls with her. We don't know who they may be or who is in Tessa. But she's basically taking on the entire world single-handedly. So
do you think
it's a lonely experience?
Do you think there's any vulnerability left in her?
Absolutely. I think this season there's a good mixture of Dolores and Wyatt. But she's still full of surprises. She still is pretty ruthless, but I don't know. I think her interactions with Aaron kind of make her challenge her ideas about humanity.
And Aaron, you're playing a brand new character named Caleb, and he's a construction worker, right?
Yeah.
So I know that we don't know exactly what year this takes.
First of all, I'm tripping out that I'm here right now. I am such a psychotic fan of Westworld, and the fact that I just had like an out-of-body experience watching everyone answer these questions. So,
you found the center
anyways,
of the maze.
Yeah.
What was it like when you stepped on the set for the first time?
I mean, I was kind of shell-shocked and starstruck and all of the things, and yeah, it was very exciting.
So you're playing Caleb.
Yeah.
We think maybe, not confirmed officially, the show takes place somewhere in the year 2050 to 2060-ish, maybe, possibly. So what's different about construction work in the future?
Oh, it's all the same.
It's all the same?
Yeah, I mean, there's some robots involved, but...
Can you tell us about the robots?
Well, I have a robot, his name's George, and he's a very helpful robot, and I love him. And he's red.
Okay. Is Caleb a white hat, as it were, or is he a little black hat-ish?
I think he's, Caleb has, you'll see, I think, very early on in this season that Caleb has kind of a complicated past. That's what we really kind of all do, but I think there's a bit of a white hat and black hat, maybe. I don't know. You can see.
When he's venturing into black hat territory, I've heard maybe he's using an app or something, blockchain powered to.
Yeah, he's just trying to survive in the world, and sometimes he has to do bad things.
Bad things using bad things.
Yeah.
Luke, you're here.
Yes, thank you. I am.
So there was this very interesting scene at the end of season 2. So your character and Tessa's character are having a conversation that at first we all think we understand, and then all of a sudden maybe, at least I thought, maybe there's a whole other thing going on that I've missed. You want to fill us in?
Yeah, there's probably a whole other thing going on that you missed. Or not. I mean, the thing about Stubbs is he's not very good at his job. This is the head of security, and not a good track record. So
So you're like following by the code, as it were?
maybe he's just kind of casting his stones.
Got it.
Seeing what happens.
Okay. Jonah, you and I were talking a while back about some of the themes of season 3, and we had talked a little bit about algorithmic determinism, which is a big jumble of words, but you said some really interesting things. I'd love to have you go into that just a little bit if you can.
Yeah, it was one of the things that, as we've been making the show, well, I like to say when we started, Westworld was a dystopia, and now 3 seasons in, I think it's actually kind of the best case scenario, to be perfectly honest.
How so?
Well, the form of AI that we've got on the show is thoughtful. I mean, murderous, but thoughtful. And I think we're actually entering into the age of artificial stupidity. I think that's where we're headed now. We're in low grade, kind of dumb algorithmic world where, so you picture, and this is one of the concepts that we started talking about when we were looking at the season, trying to figure out what the rest of the world looks like, if indeed that is where the show is. And one of the things that's happening is you should call it the Netflix effect, right? Which is Netflix tells you what you want to watch next, right? Because it's some giant algorithm in the sky that watches what you watch and decides you're going to watch manga for the rest of the night. And so just picture that applied to every part of your whole life. And that's kind of feels like the world, like when you talk to technologists, they talk about algorithmic determinism in quiet, kind of hushed terms because they know that we've already built it. We're already kind of in there.
And that to me seems like a good extension from where for me, season 2 seemed like it was about surveillance capitalism. Because at some point, Delos is not, Delos is taking everybody's data and mining and refining and monetizing it in a way that is totally obscure. And it was interesting watching season 2 in the wake of as the Cambridge Analytica scandal at Facebook was unfolding. Were you hoping that we would make that link during season 2?
Yeah, one of the fun things about this show is that you get to play around with these big ideas and present them to the audience as if they're far in the future, but they're not. They're kind of right now. And one of the fun things about the 3rd season is we just discard the idea of metaphor and just deal with the world for what it is, which is a giant shit show.
So I want to press you on one more point, and then I have a bunch of questions for everybody. But the point is that when you and I were having that conversation, we were talking about the inspiration for some of these characters, and in particular Ford. One of the very cool things about this show is that while all the architects are a bunch of old white guys, their progeny are a bunch of incredibly powerful, strong women. So yes, I applaud that. We don't see that enough. That's right, and you have incredibly strong, powerful, brilliant women sitting up here, which is amazing too. Now here's my question though. My question is about Ford. Ford is based on a real person, right?
A little bit.
Ish.
Composite of several real people.
Well, can we talk about some of them?
Do we have any lawyers here?
We don't, it's good.
Lisa, you're a lawyer. Why don't you talk about some of that people?
Listen, I know we're kind of jokey. I don't think this is bad. I think it's a really interesting point that furthers a conversation.
Well, I mean, I think he is a composite of a bunch of people. I don't know who you said before, but I was always influenced by Prospero. Who are you writing?
Prospero's not going to sue us. We're pretty safe.
No, we're fine. I'm a lawyer, as he said. We're good.
I mean, one of the weird things that's happening with AI is that a lot of these projects are, they're privately funded. They're in anonymous little office parks in Mountain View and Shenzhen and around the world. And part of the market advantage is to go in stealth mode. A lot of these companies aren't in stealth mode. I mean, a lot of people hadn't heard of Demis Hassabis, who's one of the people we talked about.
And he is the founder of DeepMind, which was acquired by Google. And for those of you following all the advancements in Go and some of the biggest things happening in AI, it's coming out of his shop.
Yeah, and Demis, when we heard a little bit about Demis's work, very smart guy, demonstrably, but some of the ways in which these things are being crafted and built, these intelligences are being created out of the public eye, and that may not be a big deal, or it may be the single biggest mistake humanity ever made. Is that there isn't a lot of oversight. You have a lot of people talking about this. Elon Musk talks about the need for transparency in the development of AI. If we're all collectively building a god, it might be good if everyone gets a bit of a voice into how that's being developed, what values.
That will get to the tradition, though.
Yes, exactly. What makes a much better TV show when you don't do it?
No, but I think it's good for everybody to have a sense that this is not just science fiction. This is in some ways reality.
Yeah.
Right? But this hasn't happened yet.
Very, very much. Everything that's happening in the show is a little heightened, but it is based on something we're seeing in the real world.
Thank you. So season 2, a lot of the characters, a lot of the hosts went through the transformation. And paradoxically, Tessa, your character, we think was maybe up until the very end human, right?
Yeah, no, she was human.
She behaves more algorithmically than any of the hosts who seem to adopt more humanistic values. So I'm curious, from your point of view, what it was like to play a character that seems very, very challenging, and how to portray that.
I mean, there's so many things that I loved about playing Hale, and now I get to play some new version of her, and certainly there was some mystery leading the park in terms of who she took with her and what shape she would take this season. But one of the things that I think was so daring is, and Lisa and I spoke about this a bunch, was what does power look like in the future, and can someone who's incredibly powerful in a company be a young woman of color? For me, that was so cool to have that be the case and not have it be something that you needed to talk about. And I think so often, we don't get to see that. So I love that about her. And also just, what happens when big business prioritizes sort of the bottom line over people. I mean, it first showed the question of the nature of our humanity. I think, for some people, they see Hale as sort of a super villain, but the truth is, and maybe just because I'm used to playing her, I can say this, they were robots, they weren't humans. So I think this season I don't know how to talk about this show because I never know what I can say. It's really fun.
Well, let me ask you then a non-season 3 related question.
Okay, cool.
So a lot of the hosts' storylines are about autonomy and free will.
Yeah.
So as an actor, do you think you have free will in playing the parts that you play?
Maybe we talked about not asking that question.
It's a wonderful
Cross
question.
that question off.
Oh. Well, I will say, I don't know, I think, something that's been enjoyable, for example, when we were shooting last season, and there were moments when I was already Dolores, but I didn't know it, and then we were shooting in Utah, and right before we were getting on the plane, Lisa was like, she texted me, she was like, do you have a second to talk? And I was like, sure. And she's like, I feel like maybe you should know something now. And I was like, okay, what? And then she was like trying to explain to me that Dolores was inside me and what that meant, and this was before the reveal was happening. But I sort of love the experience of really being a part of something where you just have a tremendous amount of trust and you're in on the journey, and you feel like you're a part of steering the ship, but there's also things at work that you're not all the time in control of. And once I sort of knew where we were going, then I could get on the phone with Evan and ask her for like tips about how to be Dolores. I think it's been a job for me that continues to surprise me, and I guess what I'm saying is I like in the moments where I feel like I don't entirely have free will. It's fun to be controlled by masters like Lisa and Jonah that just do really cool, twisted stuff to you.
Evan, what were some of the tips?
Carbonite with the gun.
Oh, God. I don't know.
Can I? No, I shouldn't say.
Well, I don't know. Well, I don't point out anything that then they're going to notice and then it ruins it.
Okay, I'm not gonna say.
All right, I don't even notice. It's just like little physicalities and like stuff you do with the voice and like. But there is one thing that Dolores always does, which I don't care you guys knowing because I hope somebody notices. Whenever she sits down, her right hand is always in her left. Always.
Now, is that a convention that you brought to the
I just
record?
did that. That's just a thing. And then I passed it on to Tessa and I thought, oh, this will be fun
Oh,
for
yeah.
now you to do. And then it'll just be a thing that like not everyone will notice, but I know.
No, everybody notices that kind of stuff. Are you crazy?
And then I have all these really fun voice memos from her doing lines. I'm like, can you say this? One day I'll ask you to say unrelated things from the show, and Dolores
I
will
didn't read
voice.
this. Is this in the script?
You're like, say happy birthday to my parents. You're like,
So, Jeffrey, I want to switch over to you and talk about Bernard, but first I was wondering if it's appropriate to ask for a musical interlude. I heard that you and Luke are pretty good singers, and her duets, does that ever happen in public?
Yeah, won't be singing.
No singing?
There you go.
Very nice.
Lowe Buckley, Paul. Lowe Buckley.
Buckley?
Do it.
Buckley.
This is why we asked him not to come.
All right, Jeffrey, let's get serious here about Bernard. So, Bernard went through some significant transformations in season 2, and I think one of the things that seems to have happened is that he became empathetic. And I'm wondering if he learned that empathy, do you think, or was it programmed?
I guess that's the question of the show, isn't it? To some extent, right? Is it live or is it Memorex, I guess, I mean, that is the central question.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's the question.
Fair enough. That's
So what's the answer?
The question is the thing, man. Roll with the question.
So is there, as an actor though, I mean, you've played some unbelievable roles in lots of different shows, including Boardwalk Empire. My question, which was, when you're playing a character though that has to emote, but has to be so restrained, I mean, that is so different from a lot of the other characters I've seen you play. How do you do that?
Well, I just read the script and we, as everyone has described, I think we have a real gift in this gig, and that's our bosses. We've got two. Come on! We've got two of those incredibly generous and also engaging and challenging, like leaders that you could ask for in the kind of work that we do. So I read the script and I bombard them with questions, and then I try to translate all that into performance. So Lisa early on would tell me, okay, well Bernard, well they didn't tell me everything right off the bat, but it was he's just told he's restrained Bernard, he's restrained and he's just going about his thing, and so I just take.
Well, there's an intensity there.
Well, I guess the circumstances of kind of being created, by Ford, Anthony Hopkins, and then routinely tortured by him, you know, over the course of a couple of seasons.
I mean, I actually recreated you.
And you know, tortured by Dolores as well lends itself to a certain kind of interior intensity, I think.
I was under orders.
Or maybe.
Thandie, I cried. There were several scenes where my husband and I sat on the couch with first just a few tears and then trying to pretend like we weren't sobbing in front of each other. Your character went through so many things.
I know she's exhausted by this.
She's well. So here's the question. You know, what do you take out of your own humanity to play a character who went through a transformation, but was also such a example of power and a powerful mother? What is it that you bring from your own experience as a human?
Oh God, that's really hard. I mean, I've never had to go through anything like it, so it's pure imagination, and as Jeffrey was saying, it's what's being written. I mean, it's fantastic. The setup is extraordinary, what we've been given. And we're robots, we're AI. That can't be, you know, forgotten. And yeah, the second season was really, really hard. I found it as an actress really hard for this incredible being who has learned so much and who manages to find her free will and chooses to sacrifice that. And then the second season was hard. I mean, I got to kick some fucking ass with, you know, show gone well, that was good, but you know, it was a tough thing for the character to go through. And I, you know, with this new season, for these, you know, she's an extremely expensive piece of hardware, right? And we've seen the destruction of Westworld as we know it, and you know, it's this thing that is treated like has no value. That's what she receives, and yet she is an extremely expensive piece of hardware. So what I'm loving right now is what that gives her in terms of the choice she makes about her value. Because that's one of the things about these robots. They are not ever taught about what their value is, ever. They have no sense, really, of it. And I'm loving that agency.
That's analogous to what a lot of people face in their everyday life.
Absolutely, certainly, because what we're taught, you know, it's so funny, you know, talking about like, you know, we as human beings, we control ourselves, you know, we teach ourselves how to be in the same way that human beings have taught robots how to be. And we're not doing a very good job, you know, we're not teaching ourselves the right thing. So like what's so beautiful about this artificial intelligence is that they're being taught important skills, and it's what they're going to do with them is what separates them from us, and we should be embarrassed by how badly we're doing.
From your lips to Silicon Valley.
Well,
Preach. All right. So I'd like to do a lightning round of questions. So this will be fun, maybe, possibly. I'm going to ask all of you a question, and I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if the answer is yes. Okay? So this is ostensibly a show about the dangers of giving away your data to commercial enterprises, about people making poor decisions about the future, about the rise of new kinds of artificial intelligence. And so I would like for you to raise your hand if you have a smart speaker in your home.
I didn't tell you about it yet.
For those of you who raised your hands, how many of the speakers are in either your bedroom or your bathroom? We're all friends. All 7,000 of us.
are they the kinds of speakers that you can talk to?
Alexa. Alexa, Google Home, Apple's product.
I have one that's
I
unplugged.
like paying for something to spy on me.
I had one.
Listens to everything I say in my home and asks it things. And then keep it on while it listens to all the conversation.
I unplugged mine.
Yeah.
Okay.
My daughter threw mine across the room and it doesn't work anymore.
Paying to have
Clever
someone
girl.
in your house.
All right, here's the next question. Raise your hand if you've ever uploaded your DNA to a testing service like a 23andMe.
Oh shit, yeah, we did.
Oh, you mean have it done?
But that's good, that means we have
So you can get it done, can you automatically upload it?
the robot DNA that you guys are writing about?
We did it to get our children.
I want to change my
Worth
DNA.
it, worth it.
I didn't like it.
All right. Raise your hand if any of you drive a car that has autonomous features, like a Tesla or something similar. So the showrunners are cool with robots driving you around in a car by yourself.
It's a hard show and you're tired at the end of it.
It's my life. The self-driving car saves my life.
I mean, we'll discover in season 3 that their robots are terrific drivers.
So I can't help but make an observation, which is that Lisa Joy and Jonah, you both seem like, you know, lovely, friendly people. And yet, the show kind of seems like you're telling us that there's an error in the source code of humanity, which is really dark. Is that what are you that down on humans and the choices?
I was going to say yes, and I would say no. I thought I knew you better than this. No, I mean, I think you're more bleak on things than I am, no?
Depends. I would say my wife fully understands the concept of loving someone while acknowledging their many flaws.
That's nice.
I'm not gonna have any more glasses.
That's good.
I
No, I mean, I think maybe it's something to do with, and it's funny, these beautiful actors on the stage. You know, I was incredibly shy, and kind of still am. So this is somewhat terrifying whenever we do it. But I think when you're pretty shy growing up, you start to look at the world almost from an outsider, sort of alien, some might say robotic perspective, you know, because you're just kind of on the fringes and you're a bit afraid to go dive into the pool, you know, and you're trying to look at human mannerisms and behaviors and see when it's safe to jump in. And part of what happens is you see both beautiful things that other people aren't noticing, you know, the other people sitting on the outskirts of the pool, wondering if they look funny in their bathing suits, and you feel, I think, a kinship with them. But I think you also see like people like shoving each other's heads down under the water, and other people joining in and thinking it looks fun, and you can't help but see a really vast spectrum. I don't think humanity is doomed or necessarily ugly. I think there's beauty in what we are, but I do think that we seem to recapitulate in cycles of violence and in a certain amount of tribalism that maybe, I don't know, it's rooted in some kind of survivalist, you know, genetic take care of your brood thing. I don't know what it's rooted in, but the implications of it are really difficult because we aren't living, you know, in 200 centuries ago. Our civilizations have evolved, our technologies have evolved, and it feels as though we should be able to get to broker better, you know, community interactions than some of what we have. So
That we should have some agency and be a part of the problem, that all of us should.
yeah, and that the solutions that we can find for the things that, you know, that keep us somewhat primitive and base and ugly in our desires could improve and grow more sophisticated. But sometimes there is a little bit of a disconnect between that. My car can drive, but we can't get rid of violence.
Right. Well, the show is, yeah, I applaud that. Because it's right. The show is pretty violent, though, right? I mean, it's real violent. Is that something that went into your calculus as you're thinking about how to tell the story of humans and machines sort of awakening together?
I mean, I think the show is violent, but nowhere near as violent as the world. You know, and especially if you look at the world at large. We're looking at isolated incidents that happen to people in their lives in this show and traumas that they've undergone. And if you look at the statistics of, you know, violence against women, you know, the way in which people can hurt each other, it's not like we're showing an outsized amount of violence. It's that we're putting a lens on that violence and really examining it, which might make people uncomfortable, but it should be uncomfortable. Like, it should be terrible.
So this is a question for anybody who feels like they want to have a conversation about it. And that is, You know, your perspective has to have changed for those of you who have been on seasons 1 and 2, and you know, Aaron, now that you're part of the show, everybody's perspectives on automation and privacy and data. I mean, I have to think that you're sort of forced to confront all of that as you're working on the show. I just wonder if that's changed. How has anything about the show changed how you are in everyday life?
It's changed everything. No, sorry.
Now, do you see the world a little differently?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I don't know, I've always been kind of, again, I'm such a psycho fan of this show, and so what the story that they're telling the first couple seasons really kind of made me look at the world through a more focused lens. Yeah, I don't know. It also makes me think that maybe we are all just living in a simulation.
I think,
No joke.
yeah.
That comes up a lot for
Yeah.
many people.
I think something interesting actually about violence is, because I consider myself a very non-violent person, and last season there was a scene where Hale is walking through and she, or Dolores is walking through and she shoots some guards, and when we were shooting it, they were stuntman, and I shot them and one fell down on the floor, and I don't know what got into me. I stepped on this man to walk through him.
It's a good shot.
It felt really badass. I was like, God, I'm cool. I felt like I was like in a video game, and I felt really cool, and people really liked it on set. And then later in the day, I had to shoot. I had a gun to Jeffy's head, and when we were done with that scene, I was like really, really upset, and it made me. I felt very emotional. There was something about having a gun so close to someone that I'm close to, and that I feel warmth about, and suddenly that violence felt very challenging for me, and it was interesting for me to excavate the ways in which the violence that we perpetuate on each other, suddenly when it's something that feels personal to us, we understand, but we're able to ignore the many violent acts that happen all over, you know, globally, if it isn't always in our backyard. And that's something really, you know, for someone that considers themselves to be nonviolent and progressive and compassionate and all those things, it was useful for me to take a seat back and realize, no, I also have that in me. That what separates us as humans has a lot to do with programming and our circumstances. I have been able to be privileged to be nonviolent because I haven't been confronted with the experiences that might propel me into violence, and it was really useful for me to acknowledge that is in my humanity. It's a part of who I am. So there's moments like that constantly on the show, and certainly our relationship to technology. That's something that I constantly am confronting with working on the show.
And it's what
You never told me that, Tessa. Makes me feel good.
I was torn up. I really was.
One thing that I've thought about, and I think I was kind of reading about it a bit before. I don't remember chicken, egg, whatever. But the ways in which the technology that we use now, and the ways in which it's used upon us, is creating job displacement and income disparity, and the concentration of wealth relative to the absence of concentration of wealth among the majority of people in our country and certainly in our world. I mean, that's something that I've kind of been increasingly focused on as we've worked on this. Less the kind of technological issues, but the social impact, the economic impact that these technologies are having. And it's not something that I hear discussed a terrible amount. When you asked us to raise our hands, I thought I was at, like, you know, the debate or something like that. You know, raise your hand if you, what's your immigration policy? But I mean, this seems like a glaringly obvious driver behind wealth disparity in our country, and we don't have a conversation about it. So I'm really appreciative that we at least have a conversation on our show about these things, and increasingly so this year during season 3 about the ways in which inequality is being driven increasingly by these tools that we were all kind of addicted to at the same time. It's an interesting little hook there. So that's one thing that I've tried to focus on a bit more since having worked on this.
What is so good about this show is that AI is a buzzword, and yet this show, I think, does the best depiction of showing and explaining to us what artificial intelligence is now and might become, and it forces us to confront the realities of the future that we're creating in the present. The storytelling is great, but it's an important show.
So to answer your question, when does the story take place? It takes place now.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. All right, we have some audience questions that I know we need to get to. So, where are, there we go. Okay, so, ask away.
Hey everyone.
Hey, how you doing?
First off, Tessa, congratulations on being in the Marvel Universe, playing your role as Valkyrie. Aaron, I have an important question for you. Today in our society, things are messed up. In your society, playing the character you were playing, how hard is it to like live in that society and go among the flow with it?
You know, it's we all know the world that we kind of are placed within, and so for my character Caleb, I mean, this is kind of the world that he was born into, so it's very normal for him, but it's impossible for him not to wish for a better world, just like we all wish for sort of a better world, a less complicated world. Can we just all get along and love one another? I love you. But yeah, you know, we all, some people are born into privilege, some people are born into poverty. Caleb was, you know, born into just kind of just a complicated thing. Yeah, he's just kind of learning to just roll the punches really, but yeah.
Okay.
This is for Evan.
Hey!
So Dolores has this incredibly strong conviction in every choice she makes, but a lot of the other characters challenge that with their perspective. So do you think morality is subjective or something that we might create from society and make our own forms of it after that?
Well, I mean, I think one thing that I find interesting about my character, which constantly makes me question things about our own ways. I don't know, things aren't black and white, and the longer I work on the show, the more that becomes apparent. And then some things are, like the system being rigged. And are we really in control of our own destinies? And why is it okay to kill this person, but it's not okay to kill this person? Well, it's because we decided that this kind of killing is okay, but this kind of killing is not. And that in itself is our own moral code, and we change the rules whenever it's convenient. And we look at somebody and we call them a hero, you know, even though they might be doing some of the same things that the villain is. And the villain actually might be liberating people, but he's not doing it in the right way, so that person's bad. You know, it's like, there's so many gray areas, and that's kind of why I love Dolores, because, you know, while it's difficult for me to do a lot of the things that she does, I understand why she's doing it. And so I think that's exactly what the show is asking us all, and, you know, why it's challenging, because we're having to examine these things that we've just taken for granted and pick them apart again, and sort of see through the illusion, see through the maze, you know, see things for what they really are, if we can. And I think she sort of just kind of encapsulates all of those things. But I'm really excited for people to see her this season, because I feel like she just is constantly growing. She's constantly discovering new things about herself, constantly discovering new things about the world. She's always being challenged, even though she very much has it together and knows her every move and is 1,000 steps ahead of everybody else most of the time.
she's still taking in all the information and still learning and still growing. And I'm excited to see where she goes next, honestly. Yeah.
All right, let's go.
How often do you have someone ask you a question dressed as your character?
Not often.
That's pretty cool.
That was cool.
Another question?
Hi there, my name's Sam. My question's for Aaron Paul. I'm a big fan.
Thank you, Sam.
I was just wondering what draws you to these type of characters who aren't exactly model citizens and who take the local job all the time?
Yeah, I just like to get beat up, you know, dragged through the mud a little bit. Also money, yeah. No. I don't know, man. I always gravitate towards characters that really make me feel very deep-rooted, complex emotions, and I'm not afraid to kind of just open up my heart and just kind of really feel the torture, the pain, the love that these characters are going through. And when I sat down with Lisa and Jonah, they kind of just painted this picture of who this guy was and where they were going with this season. I was just, you know, dreams were coming true, and so yeah, that's really why. Thank you, man.
All right.
Hi, my question is for Thandie, since Maeve is fierce AF. I was just wondering if you had a favorite scene in season 1, 2, or 3 to see her kick some booty.
Yeah, bud.
You're a legend. I love you. You're simply like dancing around. Too many to mention, my friend, honestly. I really relished the scenes I played in season 1 where Maeve, completely vulnerable, physically naked, is just bossing every situation that she's in. And it was such an unusual setup and just completely believable in every way. I mean, when these guys explained to me that what I happened to be doing, I mean, it's insane, and it worked. And it's so funny, actually, because one of the actors that's joined us, Vincent Cassell, I was talking to him the other day, and he was like, because I mean, Maeve, she's not really naked at all in season 1. I'm like, what? And he loved the show, he'd seen it all. He goes, no, I mean, she's not hardly naked. And I'm thinking, Jesus, I mean, I was naked the whole time. What I took away from that was that is that the show didn't exploit us in that vulnerable state, and also that so little of the nudity, certainly my nudity, well, it wasn't sexual. So the way you remember it is not as in, in a demoralizing way for my character having been sexually exploited. You don't. You think of her in her power, and how much more powerful it was that I had not a stitch of clothing on. And it didn't weaken me in any way. I mean, Vincent was a great example of how he saw me as this power and memorable, and that I was not weakened by my nudity because it was not sexualized. So I think that is a good example. That's what I love most.
All right, I think we have time for one last question.
Hi, my name is Steve. Yes, my question goes directly to Aaron Paul. Missed you since Breaking Bad, but
thank you, man.
Anytime. So what kind of character development are we looking forward to in the dynamic of your surroundings that will go through your kind of phase for this season that you're most excited about and looking forward to, basically? Hi.
Yeah. Well, and we're still in the middle of shooting, so I'm looking forward to kind of seeing what's next for this guy, because each episode, each script that we read, the onion is sort of just peeled back for us as actors, kind of learning more about our characters. And so this is obviously a very new character to this world, to the show, but I think what Caleb does, it just gives the fans of the show just a look at just one of the humans living in this sort of futuristic society. You know, people 50 years ago would look at this society now as being just a crazy, crazy futuristic world that just seems impossible to exist. But what you're about to see, season 3, is just right around the corner, like we were just talking about, and that is insane. But we just have to roll with the punches. But, yeah. Ahoy, man!
I was gonna say that.
Yeah!
All right, so
Look great, bud.
I lied. Actually, there's one more question. That's for me, and it's for Jonah and Lisa.
Aaron, you're supposed to be asking to see the trailer again.
Oh, you know
I was
what?
gonna
Yeah,
ask
we
you
should.
to see the trailer again. That's what I was gonna ask.
I blew the bit.
You blew the bit. But who wants to see the trailer one more time?